We have a fucking conundrum. So a few weeks ago, Tampa Am 2023 went down, and there was one major thing I couldn't help but notice while watching everything go down. A lot more trick repetition than previous years, at least from my perception. There kind of seemed to be a package of tricks that happened incredibly frequently during the contest. These tricks being big spin front boards, kickflip front boards, kickflip back lips, back 270 lips, cab back lips, and if you wanted to add that exclamation point to your jam or run, you could step it up with a hard flip back lip or a bigger flip front board. There are two main reasons for this. The one that's maybe not so apparent to this event if it were in a vacuum is the Olympic qualifying process. The thing about the Olympic qualifying events that make them different from a lot of other skate contests is the fact that you're not only skating that event with the objective of making it to the finals, you're skating those events to earn points to climb up a leaderboard in hopes you'll be in the top 20, and especially if you're from the US, Brazil, or Japan, the top 3 in your country. So anything to simplify the process of preparing for one of these events is probably something you're gonna go for. And with the exception of the kickflip back lip, all of these tricks have one major thing in common. What makes the kickflip back lip an exception is the fact that when you do that trick, you're putting the part of your board where you pop off toward the rail, making it harder since you're more likely to hit your tail on the way up since it's got to go up and over the rail. Now if you take that trick's cousin, the hard flip back lip, while it's definitely not an easy trick, you eliminate that problem by scooping the tail away from the rail, and the front truck is what has to go over the rail now, which is far less of a risk. This is also present in every other trick on the list I mentioned, maybe with the exception of bigger flip front board. Since that spins around so much, there is a chance you'll hit your tail on the way up, but either way, that trick was still incredibly common. But this more meta strategy of having a small set of tech rail moves does make viewing these contests a lot more boring, and a lot of the Tampa Am competitors in this year were Olympic hopefuls, and in some cases even people pretty high on the leaderboard, considering that Tampa seems to be the only contest requiring you to have a pro board in order to skate in their pro division. These last few years, AMs have been competing in events like X Games and Street League, and since the Olympics aren't a professional contest, the majority of the skaters in the qualifiers are AMs. The other main reason why you saw this package of tricks over and over is because these are all flip to slide moves, which are usually done on rails. And if you look at the course layout, it's like 80% rails. And they're all either bump to rails or downward sloping rails, which is also what 80% of an Olympic qualifying course is made of. While over the last 10 years, Tampa courses have been largely the same, this one felt so much more linear than previous years, which made this year's contest so much harder to watch. Like, this was really rough. But I'm gonna end this rant for now. Without further ado, let's get into the happenings of the qualifiers. Now, don't worry, I'm not gonna talk about all 100 skaters in the qualifiers, just the ones that caught my eye who didn't make the cut, and then the top 30. Starting at number 100, Keenan Lewis. While he did bail pretty much his entire jam, he did land a front 180 switch front feeble, which is a very rare trick that looks really good. I was happy to see a small amount of girls trying to compete this year, one of which was 99th place Koko Miyake, who did manage to put down some simple rail moves, but also went for this backside grind varial flip, which I thought was pretty rad, and I wish she could have put one down. Another girl in the contest was Poland's Weronika Koromanska, who also wasn't trying the hardest tricks, but I think she had a pretty clean style, and did go for a Wally backside grind, which is pretty dope, but her performance had her finishing in 97th. Right ahead of her would be another girl, Yuno Takahashi, who I'm highlighting because she did try a couple of nollie moves, which you don't see many girls doing in contests, so props for going for it. Keeping the topic of girls going, an 84th would be Yui Harada, who while a lot of her landed tricks were a lot more on the basic side, she did do this sick-ass back nose blunt revert, which was pretty unexpected. 79th place would belong to Devin Flynn, who I really dug his more transition style approach to the course, with tricks like this lean to tail and backside wall ride to roll on grind from the deck, which was super sick, along with some switch quarter pipe moves and this perfect backside grind to firecracker. Bummed to see him play so low with this level of creativity. The highest placing girl in the qualifiers would be Shiloh Katori in 75th, which is kind of weird to me considering the fact that she didn't land too many tricks. She did kickflip the bump to bar, which was rad, along with a nice looking front smith on the handrail, and did take 3 cracks at ollieing up to no slide on the bank wall, which would have been sick, but she seemed to be placed a little high to me. I really liked Noah Pollard's first 3 tricks with the ollie 360 into the wall, the board slide popover, and ollieing up to back 180 nose grind on the edge of the pyramid. He did also backside flip the bump to bar and back heel over the pyramid, but didn't land too much else and took home 73rd. Rafael Ueda, son of legendary vert skater Lincoln Ueda, started his jam with a frontside ollie over the channel where both feet leave the board at one point. Also kickflipping up to nose stall on the bank wall and didn't really land much else. He did take a couple cracks at ollieing up to frontside tail all the way on top of the wall, which would have been huge, but Rafael ended his day in 64th. I was stoked to see Logan Mosey since he's a local dude for me. He started his jam with a sick back Smith around the corner, also putting down some more tech moves like front 180 nose grind to forward and switch front feeble, as well as airing from the quarter pipe to the bank with a frontside air disaster. He did try to gap all the way from the extension to the bank, but didn't make it either try and ended up outside of the cut in 58th. I was also a bit of a fan of Wilson Chavez, partially for this melon grab over the pyramid, but also this very rare impossible nose slide, which was done really well, and was the only guy doing impossibles in the whole contest. But sadly he didn't really put it together and ended up in 53rd. Carlos Henrique was also a highlight for me, for 1, going for a Benihana, which is the ultimate Chad move, for 2, ollieing up the Euro to manual to no slide the hubba, and for 3, leaving the course in the middle of his jam to vomit, and then coming back and putting down a half cab nose slide gazelle first try. But despite how sick all of that was, no pun intended, it only got him 52nd. In 45th was Mars Farmer, who I thought had some sick moves, namely the first try fakie flip tail slide on the hubba, as well as the wall ride across the channel, the ollie over the bar from flat, and grinding up the pyramid onto the bench and then frontside 5-0 down. I thought Wesley Box was really sick. Starting off the jam with a frontside grind from the corner to the bank, frontside grinding across the whole platform and up the wood to a frontside disaster, as well as this crooked grind shove it on the quarter pipe. He did also do a pressure flip board slide that got into Willy grind, and he did go for a grind across the platform into pivot, hoping to grind back down, but didn't land it and ended up in 41st. Jacuzzi Unlimited rider Matt Savadakis showed up and started out with a Lozy grind and followed it up with a Fakie Smith 180, which are both really cool tricks in my eyes, as well as a back nose blunt and an unexpected slob plant, but unfortunately he ended up in 36th. Johnny Hernandez ended up taking the Mob Grip Catch of the Day award for his jam performance, and all I can really say about his skating is that he had a lot of the contest kid moves like the big spin front board and the kickflip back lip. I will say holding onto the switch flip was rad and I thought he was going to snap his tail on it, but Johnny would end up just outside of the cut in 32nd. But now moving on to skaters who did make the cut. Just making it in 30th place would be Florida local Tyler Kirschenbaum, who did kickflip gap to lip slide the pyramid, which is a pretty sick move, but besides that, the contest trick package with a kickflip back lip, back 2 lip, and big spin front board, but he did take a few tries at a front heel on the quarter pipe, which is pretty rad. One spot up would be Tokiya Imamura, who did a stylish hard flip over the pyramid, as well as a really nice nollie inward heel on the bump over bar. Augustin Aquila would be next up, and I'm not really sure why he scored as high as he did, because it's more of the same contest moves with the same kickflip front lip that Tyler did, although to be fair, Augustin's jam was before Tyler, so the score was probably higher because of it. Kairi Matsumoto would make the cut in 27th, putting down a hard flip front board, which is way more respectable than the hard flip back lip, since it has the exact opposite problem to what I mentioned in the intro, because you're scooping your tail directly at the rail. Hozumi Kai took 26th, and he did have a much more simplistic but stylish approach to the course. Like, he looks really chill and smooth, and I definitely appreciate that. I also definitely appreciate this back nose blunt across the pyramid as well. Malachi Gray would be right ahead of him, starting out with a frontside hurricane, one of my favorite tricks, along with tray flipping up into a nollie lip slide, which is a trick that gets way too much hate. Morgan DT immediately caught my attention by starting off with a Susky grind, and I also really dug the half cab backside grind and the kickflip backside 5-0 fakie on the hubba, which is a really hard combo to do quick like that. And these tricks, among others, got Morgan into 24th place. Piero Nunez had a couple of cool grind combos in his jam, like the 5-0 to switch crook to flat, as well as the feeble to back Smith across and down, and these moves, as well as having a pretty small amount of bails, got him into the semis. Taisei Hamamura also made it in, and he did have more of the contest package going on with a bigger flip front board, cab back lip, and hard flip back lip, but he did also tray flip over the pyramid, which was rad. Ishmael Henrique reminded me a lot of Felipe Gustavo style-wise, and my favorite thing about his jam was that he did a back Smith where his front foot came off a little bit, and then later he came back to the same rail and did another back Smith but intentionally took his foot off. I love shit like that. Luca Hirata made the cut, throwing out a rare cab heel flip into the Euro gap, which immediately makes me think of Kellen James. He did try to throw a couple down the 4 stair, but he didn't make them. I'm also a big fan of the way he does his switch frontside flips. They're almost like old school switch frontside flips. Richard Churi was also in the mix, which is incredibly strange to me because since he's currently ranked higher than Jagger and Yuto for the 2024 Olympics, I could have sworn he was already pro. And it does kind of feel weird that that's the case and he's also 30 to put him in the same contest as a bunch of like 13 to 20 year olds, but it's what they did, so maybe I'm the only one who thinks it's weird. David Tuesta made it into the semis in 18th place, and he's a little bit of a Yuto clone with the Nollie 270 slides and really just a bag of tricks that largely resembles Yuto's. Like the tricks I'm showing you here, these look like it could be a Yuto jam, right? I understand trying to adopt a strategy to do well in contests, and who better to study than the Olympic gold medalist, but copying essentially their whole bag of tricks is really odd to me. I did, however, really dig Jason Gunther's skating with the pole jam off the bar and little 5-0 bonk, as well as the 2-trick combos of front Smith into tray flip and ollie 1 foot into frontside hurricane. Just some nice, smooth skating and very few bails. T-Men Overbake's trick selection was a bit more on the simple side, but I think he has a really good style, which someone skating like this at only 13 is pretty rare. Yeah, don't let his size and power fool you, he's 13, it's pretty crazy. Gabe Vigliotti also made the cut, and he was another guy with the contest package, having a lot of that generic moveset, but I will say I do appreciate this ollie out to wall ride and this front salad grind. But I really dig Jake Yanko's skating, who as of October 20th actually turned pro for Welcome, which is much deserved. The back Smith fakie into cab over the bar was a really sick combo. I love this nose manual across, as well as the board slide yank into the bank. He also backside ollied up to tail on the perch and his front foot had no part of it. Ollied up to barley grind on the bank wall and threw out a 360 ollie 1 foot on the quarter pipe, and ended out his landed tricks with a roll-on grind up the pyramid onto the bench to back 180 grind down. Sick ass shit. Right ahead of him would be Victor Borges, whose highlights for me were backside grinding up and across the pyramid, nollie heel flipping over the bar with a lot of style, and no sliding this tall ledge from flat then coming back to do it again with a nollie heel out. Raimu Sasaki also made it in, and he had a bit more of the generic contest package with the cab back lip and the crook nollie flip, but he also had some more solid stylish moves like a switch 180 front feeble and a classic switch back 180 over the bar. Waxen Mass showed a lot of power in his skating, just casual control, but also showing off his massive pop by ollieing over the bar from flat, as well as getting into a front nose slide and front 5-0 on the bar from flat, which I love a lot. Nicolas Ramos made it into the top 10, and the things I like from him the most were the late front shove and late front big spin over the bar, but a lot of the rest of his jam seemed to be more like going through the motions with contest tricks in order to stay on his board for enough of the time. Costin Eaton, little brother of Jagger, took 9th in the qualifiers, and if I'm being honest, Costin might low-key be a little sicker than his older brother. I dig the double front blunt line on the gap to rail in the quarter pipe, and the switch backside grind and switch front Smith, as well as the gap out to back Smith on the pyramid. You don't see a whole lot of skaters from South Korea, but Junie Kang showed up and made it to the semis, and if I'm being honest, the only real highlight for me out of Junie's jam was the frontside flip over the pyramid, because besides that, he also had a lot more of the contest meta strategy with taking a page out of Yuto's book with the U-Tornado but board slide, which most of the 270 out was spun on the ground for sure, and also flipping out of a down rail, which I'm just not a huge fan of because it never really looks that good. Roman Hager made it to 7th place, and I really liked this back 180 fakie grind across the rail. It's super hard trick to get into. He followed that up with a fakie hurricane and also had a sick combo of tray flip up the Euro to front blunt shove on the kinked rail. He also threw out a half cab front blunt on the quarter pipe, which is one of my favorite quarter pipe moves. Julian jeang-agliardi is a kid with a lot of hype around him, and this gap to front feeble to start out his jam is a good indicator of why. He also had some sick moves like frontside flip on the quarter pipe, front feeble kickflip out, nollie big spin back lip, and kickflip front feeble, but a lot of his other moves with the generic contest package, but it was all enough for him to get into 6th place. 5th place would belong to Gabriel Aguilar, who did also have a couple of those more contest-type moves, but also threw out a gap to front nose blunt and a nose slide across the whole pyramid to nollie heel out. Momahei Yabushita took 4th, and again, he had quite a few of that contest trick package. However, this kickflip front board was over the bar into the rail, which for a dude this size is pretty damn hard, so credit where credit is due. I was also a fan of his frontside flip on the quarter pipe and this back sugarcane. 3rd place was taken by Ginwoo Onodera, and I'll let Gary Rogers give my thoughts on Ginwoo. Take it away, Gary.
Them socks killing me. Them socks.
While I'm not really a huge fan of Ginwoo's skating, mainly because he just kind of throws tricks into everything, and it is really all largely the same motion into his tricks, but I will give respect for the quarter pipe maneuvers in his jam, namely the frontside blunt kickflip, the big flip, and the kickflip 360 into the bank. But the top 2 qualifiers got a straight shot into the finals, and one of those skaters was Brazil's Carlos Garcia in 2nd place. The big thing about Carlos's jam is the fact that he was flawless up until his last 2 tricks, so he skated perfectly for 2 minutes and 40 seconds. He was also flipping into a lot of tricks, which makes that level of consistency much more difficult. And my favorite tricks in his jam were the kickflip nose grind on the hubba, the nose blunt big spin across the pyramid, and the kickflip nose slide big spin, which was his last landed trick. And the top qualifier was Aimu Yamazuki. Aimu's jam actually started off with a bail, which can usually be discouraging, but he was able to shake it off and land some really good tricks, going over the bar with a nollie big spin, a varial heel that almost looped out on him, and a nollie front heel, as well as a back tail over top of the bench, a nollie front blunt, a 180 switch crook popped out early to forward, and a tray flip right into a nose slide pretzel, one of my favorite ledge moves, and a nollie heel crook. I will say that I feel like a lot of the lower ranked people who made it into the semis felt pretty random, because looking back at some of the people ranked in the 30s through like 45 or 50, those performances are all incredibly similar. I think a huge example of this is how similar the jams feel between someone like Johnny Hernandez and Hozumi Kai, but Johnny is just outside of the cut and Hozumi got in. I don't think there's any backstage politics causing them to score some dudes higher over others. I think it may just be that scoring 100 skaters is pretty hard to keep them consistent the whole time. But either way, we have our top 30 going into the semis. But before they closed the night, they had the independent best trick jam. I do enjoy watching these, even though I do find it difficult to remember who did what all the time, because there are so many AMs that go to these contests that I don't follow regularly. So face blindness kicks in really bad while watching this. First off, I want to talk about 4 honorable mention tricks that weren't landed that I really wanted to see. I'll start out with Coco Miyake's backside grind varial flip that she was trying in her jam. I think that's a pretty cool combo, and I wish she could have rolled away from it. She did get really close a couple of times, but just couldn't ride it out. There was also a dude who I couldn't identify who dark slid the ledge and then tried to do it across and down the rail, and I really wanted to see that go down. I feel like there's an IQ bell curve about dark slides, where the low end of the spectrum is that dark slides are rad, and then the peak of the curve, they're a dork trick that beginners and YouTuber enjoyers think is cool, and then the high end of that spectrum is that dark slides are rad. Chris Clayton was trying to front hurricane across and down, and once he got to the end, he was trying to fakie flip out, which while I don't love flip outs on downward rails that low to the ground, I know it probably would have gotten into the top 3, so it would have been nice to see. And Wilson Chavez was trying to upgrade his impossible nose slide from his jam with a big spin out, and I wanted to see that just purely because I love impossibles, and it's becoming rare to see good ones, so someone having a proper one and doing something unique with it is so rad. But now on to some nice landed tricks. Lucas Aquino did 2 crook to back smiths, one switching the grind on the way down, and one switching at the kink, which he already did in his jam, but I think it's a sick flat bar combo. I also don't recognize this dude, but there was a guy who did varial flip lip slide, shove it front lip across and down, and shove it tail slide, shove it on the ledge. And I just like these because they're pretty simple, but you don't really see them ever. Some dude also did a roll-on grind across the whole angle iron of the edge of the pyramid with both feet in the middle of his board, and while I know a trick like that definitely wouldn't win a best trick, I just love watching people dork around like this. I also liked Mikey Sanchez's 5-0 forward flip, even though the one he landed wasn't probably as vertical as he wanted it. Either way, I do like when people get creative with some of the more oddball flip tricks and can actually make them look kinda good. Jackson Kudik did a really cool combo, board slide to fakie going onto the ledge and then fakie big spin off. Definitely a super little kid way to skate this ledge, but I thought it was pretty creative. But moving on to the top 3 tricks, Guilherme Alves took third with a back tail varial heel on the ledge, which is a really nice combo. While I definitely think there were some more creative tricks in the same caliber, I'm not mad at this taking third place. Second place went to Madu Teixeira, who I can only show you bails for because his land was off camera, but he did front nose slide shove it to fakie nose grind, which I don't know if I've ever seen before, and I think it's pretty creative. But the first place trick was an inward heel tail slide kickflip out, done by Kento Urano. There weren't very many flip in flip outs landed in this jam, and this one was the hardest one by far, so I can definitely see why they gave it the number 1 spot. I'm not really sure what I'd personally give number 1 to, since the tricks I tended to like the most were maybe the more creative but not necessarily more difficult, so I don't think this was a bad call. The only other highlight I can think of from this jam was somebody slamming and hitting their head so hard that they cut it open, which always really sucks in contests like these, and I don't know who this was, but I hope he's all good now. Other than that, the only thing I have to say about this jam is that there were a few dudes doing feeble to 50-50s and Smith to 50-50s, which is about one of the only things in skateboarding I really think is illegal. Since you're not really switching how you're locked into the rail, you're just lifting up and getting your front truck on the rail. It's basically kick turning on a flat bar. And there was one dude doing it into back lip and blunt slide, and I'd rather see feeble to back lip or feeble to blunt slide, or 50-50 into either of those. There was also a dude who did feeble up to 50-50 across, shove it out, and I don't really think going up the rail changes what I think about the trick. Like, feeble up and across would probably be way harder. And my last real nitpick was that there were 5 separate tray flip lip slide variations, and we've already seen 20,000 of those in contests, so I'm not sure why these dudes went for these since they weren't picked by the judges more than likely for that reason. I will mention they also did a whole concrete jam in their outside bowl, and apparently from this highlight footage, Jake Yanko fucking crushed it, but I'm sorry Tampa, I'm not gonna watch a contest on an Instagram live. I don't know why they don't stream the bowl event on the YouTube livestream since they used to, but the last few years they've done it on Instagram. Do the people at Tampa not know you can live stream for up to 12 hours on YouTube and it'll still be archived? Or did they lose the budget to have the cameras that can stream outside of the pro park? I don't know, man, super weird choice. In the semifinals, there were some skaters who didn't skate qualifiers due to getting a straight shot thanks to their finishes in Tampa Am contests throughout the year. One of them was Santino Exenberger, which, what a name, who was pre-qualified due to winning Tampa Am Netherlands. He wasn't able to put down a full run, but I will say that I appreciate the lean disaster on the quarter pipe and the switch frontside pressure flip on flat to end his day in 35th place out of 35. Ishmael Henrique would end up in 33rd, and the main highlight for me was him throwing an unexpected backside boneless into his run, and another backsmith 1 foot into his second run. Giro Platt, who got in through winning Tampa Am New York, was right ahead of him in 32nd, and I did like the fact that he really used the quarter pipes in his run, starting with a frontside air and also throwing out an indie air and frontside grinding from the little quarter pipe all the way to the big kahuna. Jason Gunther also wouldn't be able to put it together, although I did really like the combos he was trying to string together and also the miraculous rollaway from this front blunt big spin. Morgan DT finished in 30th, which I think is a little low for the fact that he did land 8 tricks and didn't fall until the end of his run. If I had to guess, aside from the kickflip 5-0 fakie and back heel over the bar, the rest of his run probably wasn't what the judges were looking for in terms of use of course and trick difficulty, but I still think that's a pretty low placing regardless. Ryo Motohashi had the straight shot due to winning the qualifying round before the Saturday qualifiers that were streamed, and unfortunately he only got 29th place. He did try some pretty hard moves like nollie back 180 switch front crook and switch tray down the stairs, but didn't roll away from them. However, I wasn't expecting a dude with this style to be putting a Peter Blunt grind into their run, so that's pretty cool. Yumeka Oda, one of my favorites in the Women's Street League and Olympic events, got the straight shot into the semis by winning Women's Tampa Am Japan. And dare I say, I think she had a finals qualifying run on her hands if she would have landed everything. This kickflip back grind and kickflip front feeble are both pretty heavy tricks. And maybe if she would have added a couple of tricks in between and rolled away from this crook nollie flip at the end, we maybe would have seen the first girl in the Tampa Am final. But Jake Yanko would also not make it through, finishing in 21st place, despite having only one fall in his second run and putting down some of the heaviest moves from his jam, like the backsmith fakie through the corner, the backside ollie up to tail on the perch, the board slide yank over, and the ollie up to barley grind on the bank wall. He actually did one more move, ollieing up to lip to smith on the bank wall, which is super sick, but it wasn't enough. But hey, Jake won the Bull Jam before the weekend, he won the Concrete Jam, and he won the Bronson Speed Killer Award, plus he turned pro before all these other dudes, so who's the real winner here? Hozu Mikai also missed the cut, with his more methodical and style-oriented run not being enough to get him through, and missing the bigger flip from board at the end of his run. And can we call this trick the new Am Shuffle? I'm so tired of seeing it right now, dude, and there's still quite a big chunk of this video to go. I liked Maliki Gray's run with the 3-trick combo of front hurricane, front tail, and front blunt to start it off, as well as his heavy kickflip front crook, but despite all that, the bail near the end of his run had him finishing in 19th place. Julian jeang-agliardi was a lot of dudes' pick to win the contest this year, but he didn't even qualify for the finals. My personal favorite thing he did was when he bailed a trick and then just grabbed his board and walked over to caveman into the handrail. But I thought his second run had the makings of being enough to qualify, being that it had 11 landed tricks, but ending off your run by bailing the new Am Shuffle when it was the crescendo of your run usually rubs the judges the wrong way. Kairi Matsumoto had the lowest ranking flawless run in 15th place, and he barely hung on to this hard flip, and I like that he went hard flip front board rather than going hard flip back lip like everyone else, since it's way more risky, but I think what held him back was kind of sticking to smaller obstacles for the most part, and unfortunately, when you're one of the first dudes in the whole semis to land a full run, the judges don't really like to boost the scores up, so you can get left behind pretty easily. Juni Kang didn't make it into the finals with a flawless run either, but he did win the Zumi's Destroyer Award, and if I had to guess why he didn't make the cut, it's because his run was only 7 tricks, which is average for a 45-second run, but pretty low for 60 seconds. Plus his last 2 tricks were just the Yuto moves, and he started celebrating a full run with 8 seconds still left in his run, and then bailed a trick and kept celebrating. I don't think judges dock points for celebrating after time, but if it affects the end of your run, they probably factor that in at least a little bit. Roman Hager also put down a full run, throwing in the back 180 fakie grind from his jam, along with some other pretty solid moves, but the judges also found his run to be not quite enough to make the cut. Gabe Vigliotti put down a run full of the contest package, and I guess the judges just didn't like his version of them, although arguably he does them with a bit more style than a lot of the other guys, because he finished in 12th place. Despite neither of his runs being perfect, Wax and Mass placed higher than 4 flawless runs. My only guess for this would have to be down to style and power, which is definitely noticeable in Waxen in comparison to the guys behind him. Waxen did also kickflip front nose the rail on the bump to bar from flat, which is absolutely psycho, and it gave him the Skater XL Trick of the Weekend award, and I think it's much deserved. That's a special thing to be able to do. But Tyler Kirschenbaum would make the final in 10th, and if I'm being honest, I don't think he's the worst of the guys out here, but I feel like Roman Hager or Gabe Vigliotti squeezing into the final makes a bit more sense than Tyler. I feel like the kickflip gap lip slide is the major thing to make the judges crank the score, because otherwise the rest of this run just isn't quite as good as some of the lower scored runs. Toa Sasaki, who was the highest ranked qualifier in the semis from being Dam Am of the Year, and is currently ranked 8th in the world for the Olympics, made it into the finals in 9th. I do find this strange considering both of his runs had bails in them, but I guess having two tricks gapping over the pyramid that are pretty risky are what got him in, as well as the new Am shuffle. Teeman Overbake also made it into the final, although unfortunately his first run it seemed like he was going to be out due to some back pain, but he came back, and even though it wasn't a perfect run, it was enough to qualify for the finals in 8th for some reason. Like, I don't know, a lot of his tricks were more on the basic side, like just a feeble grind, and then a front nose grind into a front blunt. Even though front blunt on a hubba is pretty risky, it's still kinda basic. Raimu Sasaki, brother of the aforementioned Toa, qualified for the final in 7th. With a perfect run starting with a 6 switch 180 front feeble, flowing around with a pretty relaxed style, crook nollie flipping and just barely getting away with it, and ending the run with a nice Suski grind. Laser Crawford got to skip the qualifiers due to winning Tampa Am Los Angeles and ended up qualifying for the final in 6th. I will say, even though I've seen a million cab back lips, doing one straight into a frontside flip on the quarter pipe is pretty rad. The rest of his run was more of the contest package, but the judges liked his version of it, so it was enough to get him in. Luca Harada also made it in, taking 5th place. I dig the shit out of this nose slide to crook, and the cab heel flip into the Euro gap, and him throwing out a heel flip back lip and ending his run with a heel flip back grind. I definitely think out of everyone who's made the final so far, he's the only one who seems to have his own style and his own tricks. I think the same can be said for Kento Urano, who skipped the qualifiers thanks to taking first at Tampa Am Japan. While the majority of his run was a bit more generic and contesty, this blunt to 50 and inward heel tail are all him, and two of the sickest moves from the whole contest, so definitely deserving of that 4th place spot. Mamahe Yabushita qualified in 3rd thanks to putting down a flawless run that was literally all contest package moves. I know it doesn't mean much since this is the results of the semis, but I think maybe Laser should have qualified higher just due to use of course, and it feels like they definitely gave Mamahe some little kid points. And not to go on a tangent, but I honestly think little kid points are stupid. These kids have all the time in the world to learn more tricks, but they spend all their time making sure they can land these like 10 tricks 99 times out of 100. You know what's impressive? Being an adult with taxes and bills and the chance you might wake up with a sore neck and back from sleeping the wrong way, and still going out and doing this shit. But I guess there is a separate judging criteria for grown man points because Richard Churi qualified in 2nd. And if I'm being honest, while I know a lot of Richard's points come from the fact that he throws heel flips into everything instead of just kick flips, I don't know how he doesn't get docked more for style. He's just not a very graceful looking guy, which people might think is mean for me to say, but while narrow stance can sometimes look decent, his just doesn't. It kinda looks like it would be just as at home on a scooter. But there's one name I haven't said yet that's pretty obvious if you remember all the names who qualified into the semis. Ginwoo Onodera was the top qualifier out of the semis, and it definitely feels like some little kid points in this instance as well, since his run had a bail in it. I'll give credit for the cab flip on the quarter pipe, but I feel like I'd rather see him tray flip over the flat of the pyramid than off the flat into the bump. Like, I know these tricks are all hard besides the little quick moves into the bumps, but it always feels weird when kids this young are this technically proficient at skateboarding. Like, I'm not trying to implicate anyone here, but if you look up anything about Nigel Houston's childhood, you can understand why I get a weird feeling in my stomach when someone this young is this consistent. In the final, Richard Churi would settle for last place. His undoing was an upgrade on his first trick from a kickflip back 5 to a kickflip crook, and also trying to throw a nose grind nollie flip into his run, which the only thing I can say is at least it wasn't on a handrail. Number 1 qualifier Ayumu Yamazuki finished in 11th, and it honestly bums me out that he didn't land a full run, because his trick selection is definitely a cut above most of these other guys. Back tailing over the bench, also tail sliding straight into a back 3, as well as another 2-trick combo of nollie front blunt into Bennett grind. These are choice cuts that could have gotten him into the podium off of style and originality alone, but he wasn't able to put it down. Raimu Sasaki was also unable to put down a full run, mainly due to going 0 for 3 on a crook nollie flip, although he did do a crook nollie varial heel in his second run. Carlos Garcia, the other skater who skipped the semifinals, didn't put down a full run, finishing in 9th. His run was like 90% kickflip, so I'm not quite sure he would have made top 3 with a flawless run. Luca Hirata finished in 8th, having a flawless run and switching up his run to throw the cab heel flip down the stairs instead of just the Euro gap, which I think is super rad. I like Luca's run a bit better than a couple of the runs ahead of him just purely because of his original tricks. Like Tyler Kirschenbaum took 7th, and his run was very contesty like I mentioned before, with the exception of the frontside heel on the quarter pipe, which is a super rad move, but I don't really know if that trick alone puts the whole run ahead of Luca's. I can say the same for Tiemann Overbeek, who also started his run with flipping over the pyramid into the rail, and a lot of more stock moves with the exception of the heel flip front board on the gap to rail, but arguably that's still really similar to the tricks in the contest package. I will give props to Kento Urano, taking 5th place with a really solid run that included a miraculously held onto kickflip back nose blunt, as well as upgrading to a blunt to back nose grind and an inward heel tail slide big spin. Ginwoo ended up finishing in 4th, throwing in a double flip front board on the rail, which is definitely a move that only someone under the age of 15 with this level of technical ability would do. And then my personal highlight of his entire weekend was missing this frontside blunt kickflip and then running up the quarter pipe to put his board in blunt to land it. There's so much funny little kid energy in it, and it's great. Mamahe got onto the podium in 3rd, and this run was very much the contest package, aside from this hard flip over the bar. On his 3rd run, he put down a back 270 kickflip lip slide, which while technically also part of the contest package, is a pretty wild move nonetheless, but then followed it up with possibly the worst slam besides the head splitter during the whole weekend. Toa Sasaki took 2nd place, and again, it's the contest package, maybe with the exception of the nollie heel lip slide. You don't really see a whole lot of those. People also went nuts for this nollie barley grind, but upon second glance, it's like 90% board slide, so he definitely got away with it. But Laser Crawford would be the winner of Tampa Am 2023, with a run full of upgrades. Hard flip back tail, while similar to hard flip back lip, is way harder, so I'm not mad at it. Also upgrading his 2-trick combo to the kickflip front feeble into kickflip back 5-0, and ending his run by frontside flipping into the wall ride. While it's not my personal favorite run of the contest, I can definitely see why the judges picked it for 1st place, and also the Mob Catch of the Day award. All in all, I definitely think that this year's Tampa Am was a little bit more on the boring side compared to previous years. I know that Tampa Am's atmosphere is always just a bunch of dudes that are hungry to win and charging to put their best run together, but there seems to be so much more strategy to it now, thanks to Olympic qualifying events and the way you have to skate those, to where a lot of originality between skaters gets lost, and it seems like the more unique and creative you are, the less likely you are to make it into the finals, considering the skaters I fucked with the hardest didn't even make it past the qualifiers. And I know I sound like a slight mixture of 2 Simpsons memes right now, but just go back and watch AM contests from pre-Olympics days and you'll definitely see a lot more variety between styles and trick selection even in just the finals. It just kind of feels weird that everything is so planned and thought out and is so much more based on the scores that these tricks get rather than doing the tricks that these guys actually like. Individuality is what makes skateboarding so great, and it just kind of sucks to actively watch it get stripped away from events that are supposed to be on the more raw side of things. I mean, I know Skatepark at Tampa threw their allegiance to raw skateboarding away with the endorsement of Steve Barra's influencer Sham brand, but I could go on for days about that shit. I want to thank you for watching another one of my contest analysis videos, and if this is your first one, welcome aboard. I'm continuing my Street League series after this, and I think Tampa Pro 2024 might be my next video I make that's coverage of a current contest, because that's happening in April, and there are like little to no skate contests that happen over the winter. But if you like this video, give it a like. If you've watched my previous contest videos and you're still not subscribed, or if you're new here and you want to see me talk about every season of Street League, then it would mean the world to me if you hit the subscribe button and rang the bell so you can be notified when I upload. But thank you once again for watching this video to the end, and I hope to see you next time. Bye!